Hey everybody, it looks like I did it again. Calvin and Adam here tonight. Going to go ahead and talk about a couple of different things with photography. We are now in autumn, officially, formally it started. So we're going to talk about doing some night pictures since we have more nighttime available to us, as well as doing moon pictures and Halloween. So how's it going today, Adam?
Doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Doing great. Seems like my devices are all buzzing me right now, talking about, hey, what's going on with the Hangout or something along the lines. So I'm gonna go ahead and respond to those in a little bit. Um, but let's start off the show talking about the video that I did last week, how to do this slick little graphic down here at the bottom with relative ease. About 10 minutes worth of time I took to do it, and I had a little fun with it. What do you think?
I think it looks real good. It turned out real well. Everything seems to be. I can read the title, read your name, and have no problem seeing it. Looks pretty good.
Awesome. Glad you was able to take a look at it. Hopefully other people have been able to take a look at it and see what they think about it. Um, it's not a difficult task once you know the steps to take care of the process. So hopefully more people will get a chance to do it and play more with Hangouts. Um, I have some experience, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the moon pictures. A couple years ago, I dived on into the concept of doing moon pictures, and it's really fun. But some of the key things a lot of people don't realize with taking moon pictures, we think that, oh, it's dark outside. We must go ahead and shoot for long periods of time, and we must make our aperture as wide as we can, and we do all these crazy settings. And honestly, for doing the night pictures, our settings are really simplistic. They're very comparable to shooting during the daytime. So when you want to shoot your manual settings, play around with your f-stop at being around f5.6 to f7.1. So set those settings manually. And then with your shutter speed, you want to do about a 1/125th of a second. Because the sun actually reflects off of the moon, and the moon is actually pretty bright. So with those settings, you're going to be able to capture some of the good darkness that shows up. And you want to do the fast shutter speed because at the end of the day, the moon is actually moving pretty fast. So if you do a 1/60th of a second or shorter, it's a good chance you're going to catch a little motion blur in your moon moving. Also, with your ISO, feel free to set it at 100. Just because you bump up your ISO to 200 or higher, you're going to make it more light sensitive. And that actually may cause your settings to be maybe need to be changed a little bit. What settings do you recommend, Adam?
I also recommend starting off with 1/125th of a second, maybe 200th of a second, around f4 to f5.6. It's been a while since I've taken pictures of the moon, but I've rented a 300 millimeter prime lens before and have taken a few pictures of it, and it works just fine that way. I also recommend starting off at the lowest ISO that you can, just to make sure that the picture isn't too grainy. If you start off at ISO 1000 plus, just depending on your camera, you may notice a little bit of noise or a little bit of digital artifacts. It looks like little gray spots when it should just be a pure black sky. Also, one thing to have is a good tripod, or at least a monopod. Even though you're shooting 1/125th, 200th of a second, if you have a 300 millimeter or 400 millimeter lens, it still may be a little blurry if you're shooting handheld, or if you don't have a lens like that has a vibration reduction or image stabilization. So be sure to keep that in mind.
Yep, I highly recommend using tripods. Tripods actually come in handy with giving you the opportunity to stabilize your shot. Hand holding is great when you're able to use very high shutter speeds, but the problem with the hand holding is that you're using that slower shutter speed, so that those slight movements, the longer your zoom lens is, the more those little slight movements that you make actually make up a great deal of distance. The moon is, I believe, 11 miles away, which is a very long distance for you to actually focus. So that little slight movement of 1 millimeter for a mile can wind up putting you off several hundred feet of your movement. So then you start adding additional miles to that, and you can all of a sudden veer off very easily. So I highly recommend a tripod for doing moon photography. And if you're looking to do other types of night photography, shooting stars, or definitely shooting dimly lit locations, a tripod is going to come in handy, because the tripod will allow you to set that timer up to shoot what you would normally do to get star trails, or even for you to shoot and get a building very well lit, or even a person well lit inside of a dark environment to pull in enough ambient light. One of the cool things a lot of people like to do is play around with lights and do light writing. So you take your camera, you set it up on a tripod for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or even several minutes with a bulb setting, and you have a little timer remote on your camera that you can attach, and you put it up there for a minute or two, and when you do that, you set your shutter speed for that minute or that 2 minutes, and then you want to set your f-stop as small as it can go. I notice on my Canon camera, the smallest I typically can go is f22. But if you can go to f32 or f64, that makes it even lower amount of the light that shows, and you have a greater depth of field. So you can shoot that 2 minutes and get a great amount of depth of field, but then you can light paint with a flashlight, or you can light paint with red dots. The little red laser lights, you can get different colors as well. But you can spell out your name. You can spell out anything that you want to with laser light. You can't actually see it, but once you take the picture with that long shutter speed, once it processes, you'll get a pretty cool picture. I've done that a couple times where I spelled out my name, I spelled different things, and it adds to a cool effect. Something else I've done with lights is I've done a 2-minute shutter speed, and I actually walked over inside of the picture, and I've created ghosting effects of myself. So I'll walk up, I'll put a flashlight, and I'll hold it in front of my hand, and because I'm moving quickly, I'm actually able to not be in the frame except for where I've lit up myself. So I can light up a hand in one place, and I can light up my arm in another, and then a foot somewhere else, and then a head somewhere else. And when the picture is done, I have a pretty cool picture where I'm at various different points in the photo, but it's all one capture that I've taken. So instead of doing short shutter speeds and then stacking the pictures on top, I just do a long shutter speed, and then I'm able to do all those different things in a low lit environment. Anything like that you tried?
I've done that a few times too. That reminds me of a Halloween picture I took a few years ago, where tried to enter in a local photography contest and decided to go out to a cemetery. And we went around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, just a little bit of light right after sundown, and ended up setting up the camera in front of a few gravestones. Set it up for around 8 to 10 seconds around f4, and took a long exposure picture, and then I had a speed light with me, and I aimed that just underneath my chin and up at my face, so that whenever I took the... You there?
No, I'm here.
Okay. My computer slowed down there for a second. But anyways, we took I had a speed light in front of me, and even though it was 8 to 10 seconds, I was moving around outside, and it was mainly, in all that time, it was trying to capture the gravestones and a little bit of light that was bouncing off the top of them. And as soon as I hit that speed light aimed at my face, it showed me in different parts of the cemetery right in front. So I was close to one of them in front, and then there was one that was 3 or 4 rows back, and I had a different face, and I lit that so that light was coming from underneath, and it was creating dark shadows all around my eyes and just above my nose. Added a little bit of an eerie effect to the picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun and cool things to do. Tripod with night photography is definitely two tools that go together. Taking pictures of the moon, I highly recommend it. Sometimes we actually get different type of moons that's out, whether it be a crescent moon, whether it be a full moon or a new moon, but different color tonalities. A lot of times we get some of the orange or the reddish style moons that show up. It's kind of cool to go out and be able to know how to capture that picture because in the night sky, the moon sometimes moves very quickly. I've experienced a few times where I'm driving home from work and the moon is like nice and, I would say probably 45 degrees, 40 degrees up, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, it looks full. I'm gonna go home and take a couple pictures of it. And just by my position, while I'm driving, it looks like the moon is just dropping out of sight. And as I'm driving and trying to get home, I can't get there quick enough. And as soon as I get home, boom, the moon is too low for me to be able to see. So definitely want to have your gear available and know how to do it. So that way, when those moons do present themselves to you, you have the right tools and the right knowledge in order to go do it. So before the moon gets to that, fantastic view that you want to capture, feel free to start practicing, twice a week, 3 times a week on getting out there and shooting those shots. So that way when it shows up how you want to do it, you can capture that memory so that you can be able to collect it and be able to look back at it. A few years ago, we had one of those moons where the moon had turned orange. I was out there, it didn't start until 1 a.m. Central or something like that, and it lasted until 5 a.m. And I was out there for 2 hours just snapping pictures away, trying to make sure I get it exactly how I wanted to be able to do it. And one of the problems that I experienced was that I had just started using my 70 to 200 millimeter lens, and it just didn't give me enough reach to really capture the moon how I wanted. So I captured what I felt was, maybe 100 by 100 pixel of the moon inside of a 4200 by 3800 frame. And I'm like, boo, I don't like this. I want to do better. I zoomed in on the moon and the moon looked great, but I look back at it, it's like, but it's so small. So zoom is definitely something that's going to make your opportunity better. So if you get into night photography and you find that you really dive into it, look at the telescope options. There will be a cheaper option for you than buying a lens. And the cool part about the telescope option is that the telescope means that you can use the telescope by itself, or you can get the attachment so that you can hook your camera up to it and use it that way. So that way you're not going out, because those lenses, when they get into 400, 500, and longer in the millimeter range, the prices go up astronomically. Looking at some of the Canon cameras, some of the Canon lenses, going to a 800 millimeter lens will cost me about $10,000. And I'm like, yeah, I don't shoot enough things far away from me to justify a $10,000 cost. But apparently, about 2 months ago, on the market popped up a used model. Canon sold it for 1 year or 2 year, a 1200 millimeter lens that weighs 36 pounds by itself. A lot of glass in that lens. And someone sold it, I believe, for 99 grand. When it came out brand new, I think it was 85 grand or 100 grand, something like that. And Canon only showed so many. Canon will not release how many is it that they sold. So no one knows how many is out there in the wild of these 1200 millimeter lens. But they now have a lot of point and shoots, the smaller cameras that have 35 times zooms, 50 times zooms, 60 times zooms. And they're rumoring around the internet, if you are interested in those type of things, they're talking about 100 times zoom is supposed to be coming out. Now, just to put that in perspective, the 50 times zoom on the Canon SX50, it runs about 1200 millimeters. On the Nikon 60 times zooms, it runs about 1400 millimeters. Now, if you go to 100 times zoom, you're talking about 2400 millimeters roughly. That is awesome focus for $300, $400, $500. So if someone does not want to go the route of a DSLR and they want to look at a cheaper option, a lot of these cameras have 30 plus times zoom on them, and this optical zooming that can get you, a good bang for your buck. A 1200 millimeter lens costs 100 grand. A 1200 millimeter camera, $500. It's all about budget and economics, so do what best fits you. Me personally, I picked up one of the Nikon, I think it's the P600 or the P610. It's the 60 times zoom model, and it has about 1400 millimeter. I've taken it out a couple times doing some sports pictures. I do not like the taking the picture in the sports mode. I find that the sports mode, when you take the picture, it takes a really long time for it to come back for you to take another picture. What I find kind of interesting, in sports mode, you figure it wants to rattle off pictures, and it didn't allow me to do that. It's like I take a picture, and then a second and a half, 2 seconds pass, and then I see the picture, then I can take another picture. So at the end of the day, there's different options out there. How about you, Adam? Are you back now?
I'm back.
All right.
Yeah, I was also going to mention, I've also got a Nikon Coolpix. Not sure what model it is. Oh, the L320. And this is great for taking around town whenever I don't feel like carrying my DSLR or anything else, or all the heavy gear. Works okay, but just like you said, sometimes I can hit the shutter button and it just sits there and it takes 3, 4, 5 seconds to lock in on focus, and then it'll take the picture. And I put the fastest memory card that I have available in here, and sometimes it takes a while for it to record to the card. Now, we got this about a year and a half ago. It was on sale. And for 90% of the purposes, taking pictures of family members or friends or landscapes or just something we see that's interesting, works great. But like you said, when it comes to sports or I've noticed fast-moving objects, just not enough control and it doesn't shoot fast enough. Mm-hmm. But the video, I'm not really complaining about. It's 720 and sharp enough. Audio's not great, but it is what it is. But I've also seen a few of the newer point and shoots that will give you a little bit more control, such as the Canon G series point and shoots. They give you so many options, not only to shoot and record raw images, which is extremely important when you got to post-processing the image, to manual controls over shutter speed and aperture and so much more, and every year they get better and better. But like Calvin said, it all really depends on what your budget is and what you have in mind with what you want to photograph.
Yep, got a question. Looks like they've gone away, but they may have come back. April, your question, are you in the Hangout or just watching? You're currently just watching. So just wanted to let you know that the question has been answered, and I'll flag that as marked. No way to text in there apparently, so feel free to type in your questions. We can read them out and we can go ahead and respond to them. So if you have photography related questions or you just want to talk about the show and interact, feel free to do either or. So next up in talking about the photography, with night pictures and things of that nature, at the end of the day, having the right tools is going to make your job much easier. Working with what you have is the best direction to go in, because honestly, you can use cell phone cameras now, which is they are offering better apertures inside of their cameras that are on cell phones. You used to get cell phone cameras, then apertures were 5.6, and then they went down to 4.0. Now they're dipping all the way down into 2.2 in the f-stop, which means that the aperture is going to be bigger. You're going to get more light in. Your depth of field will be a little bit more shallow with those, but ultimately you're going to get a better lit picture out of it. And that's what most people really, that's what most people really want. They want to get a well lit picture. And cell phone cameras work with night photography in a lot of different ways. So use your tools. Start out with your cell phone camera, and if you feel like you're liking it more and you want to build on it, then get you a point and shoot. And then once you decide that you've outgrown a point and shoot, then the next stop on the list is to go to an SLR. You also have options of looking at 2/3. You have cameras that you can go film. There's nothing wrong with shooting film. A lot of people still shoot film today. The film market is not as dominant as it was before, but the film market has not died off either. If you really want to get involved in film, I highly encourage going out to a local junior college. And when you go to that local junior college, take the introductory photography course that they offer. And most of them, when they offer it, is going to be a black and white film course, because they will allow you to develop your own pictures. So they will get you the opportunity to buy your own film. You can actually roll your own film. You can shoot with that film. You can then unroll that film, place it into the proper canister, add in your chemicals, and develop that film. Then you can hold your film out, which are your negatives, and you can actually let them dry. Then you can cut them into sheets. And after that, you can then take that negative, and then you can purchase the actual picture. You can purchase in any size that you want. There's a wide variety of sizes, from as small as 4x6s in some camera stores. Plug for Arlington Camera. Out here in Arlington, they actually have a huge film. That's the one at the college that I went to, TCC. They recommended going to. They had a huge supply of films and the development paper. And you can go from 4x6s, 5x7s. You can do 8x10s. You can do 11x14s, 11x17s, and even bigger with blowing up your own pictures. And you can truly have a piece of art that you started with by rolling the film yourself, to developing the film, to cutting the film, to placing it into the enlarger, to then put it into the prints, and you can create stuff. And you'll find that Photoshop was truly designed with the photographer in mind, with all the different effects that they can do with photos. And they take a lot of the different effects with layering pictures. They take the different effects with dodging and burning, in which dodging is basically blurring out something, providing less light to an area, and burning is, just like it says, darkening an area. So they take these film effects and then they allow you to do them digitally. So there's a lot of cool things you can do. Once you start picking up those different things, it potentially can make Photoshop a lot easier for you to manage and to deal with, because you see where it comes from. You understand the logic behind the madness that it does. Honestly, Photoshop is overwhelming for a lot of people. And most of the people that use Photoshop every day typically use 10% to 15% of what Photoshop can do, because Photoshop offers, close to 800 different tools and functionality that you can do. And most people typically do 30 to 40. My next video I plan on creating will be a little helpful video in Photoshop for how to apply a signature to a group of pictures. And it's real super easy to batch that out once you understand how to do it. It took me a while to understand how to do the batch, and I actually created it as a batch, and then you just simply execute it. And the process slightly changes from each version of Photoshop. It's still the same thing, but just getting to it is slightly different. So I'm going to create a little video on how to create signatures in Photoshop and how to batch them out. So it's going to be a very generic signature. Basically, there's going to be some writing, test signature or something similar to that, and then show you how you can batch out a group of pictures. And the cool part about the batching is that you build the time into doing it once, and then you can execute it, groups of hundreds or thousands of pictures in a matter of minutes, and compared to the time that you invested in it. So very fun, time consuming. So that video might be around 30 minutes long. I'm going to play around with it first before I record it, so I can work out the little nooks and crannies and things that I drag off, and sometimes I ultimately just dive into the deep end for no reason at all. And my 20-minute project turns into 5 hours, and my 20-minute project still isn't done because I went off on doing something else. Any thoughts on that, Adam?
When it comes to Photoshop, we can talk about it for hours, days on end. I use it all day, every day. And just like you said, there are hundreds upon hundreds of tools and hundreds upon hundreds of ways of doing everything. When it comes to batch processing, it's really easy for photographers to create an action real quick. And all an action is something you're going to do repetitively over and over and over again. And say, for instance, you take a few pictures and you want to have your company logo at the bottom of it just to show for web preview. Well, you can open each individual image, drag your logo in, place it in there, save that image as a new one, and just do that over and over and over. Or you can create one action, and then you can go in and, like Calvin mentioned, you can do a batch process where you can tell it what action you want to apply, such as putting your logo on the image, telling it where you want to save it, how you want to save it, so you can go through hundreds of photos in a matter of just a few minutes instead of a few hours of manually doing it. It's a huge time saver and a really amazing feature that makes one of many amazing features that makes Photoshop a great program to use for photographers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, moons, night photography, Photoshop. It's all kinds of fun, cool things that we have to do in the world of photography. At this point in time, do you have any other tips or tricks that you want to offer, Adam?
Yes. When you're going to be taking night photos and you're going to try to shoot star trails, I've seen a few people expect to get a long star trail all in one picture. Me personally, I haven't had the luck of getting a long star trail, which looks like a long circular picture of the stars in the night sky. So what I've done in the past before is I've taken a series of photos. Say, for instance, 15 to 20 photos at 30 seconds each. And I've batch processed those pictures over and over where they're all in one big photo. That way you can overlay everything and then just blend in all the stars and make sure that it looks like that one long starry trail instead of trying to get just one photo of that all together.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there's actually some tips and tricks. I seen a YouTube video a couple weeks ago where there's a lot of people that do night photography. There's a lot of people that do the star pictures, and they travel all over and do it. And one of them specifically had talked about doing star trails, and I believe that the software was made by Photomatic, if I recall. And I have to look it up, and I'm going to look it up, and I'm going to have it all available for next week. Or I might actually just put it into the YouTube and put the link on there what the program is, depending upon when I find it and when I actually post this. But basically, he talked about doing it in 2 hours. So basically, you set your camera up on bulb, you set it to click off the pictures for a 30-second burst, and then after 30 seconds, it waits so much time, then it opens up and gives you another 30 seconds. And you batch off all these pictures with using the camera and the timer setting. Once that's done, you're going to have all these pictures. You plug them into this software for star trails, but that's basically the sole purpose of it is for stacking pictures. And it will take the differences from each one of those pictures and it will stack them all together, these 200 plus pictures, and it will get you the result back of your star trails where the stars start from one side and they basically circular themselves all the way around the picture. And it's like, wow, they've taken the manual labor out of this and they made it so much easier to create these beautiful star trail pictures. But you still have to start out with a good foundation with it. So I highly encourage start working on your skill sets of doing night pictures, of just playing around. I don't recommend investing additional money until you're ready to go to that next level where you can actually use that money investment and actually enjoy your results out of it. So there's software programs on there. You can do Photoshop, Lightroom, things like that. Programs that people currently have already installed potentially can do that. Do some Google searches. If you don't like Google searches, do some Bing searches, do some Yahoo searches. But look around for the different information points that are out there, because there's a ton of information about using different programs in order to help you do star trails. And at the end of the day, if you can't find something that works for you, start playing around with the program that you do use. Picasa, free on Google, that might offer functionality. I've never used Picasa, but I do know people who do use it, and they talk about all these great things. There might be a feature in there for stacking images and doing the photo trails. And if not, I'm quite sure if it's big enough, Google will invest in something to make that functionality. It's the same thing they did with Nik Software. Nik made great plugins for Photoshop, and they also made this great program called Snapseed on just the Apple platform. And Google decided that, hey, Google Plus is rocking and rolling. We're all about pictures over here. We need to step our game up. It'd be better to invest in buying this company called Nik than it would be trying to compete against this company called Nik. So they went out, made Nik an offer. Nik accepted the offer. Next thing you know, several months later, Snapseed is available for free on Android devices. And it was made free for all the Apple devices. And they had a direct connect into the Snapseed app to actually have that post directly into Google+, which was a step up for the Apple brand, because at the point in time, Apple limits your sharing ability, whereas Google on their Android devices allows any app to have a share to function. So on your Android devices, you go into different things, and then you click to share, and you might pop up and have 30 different things you can share it with. You install 3 different Twitter apps because you like each one of them for different things that they do. Well, now you can share that same item through 3 different Twitter apps. You can share it through your Facebook app. You can share it through your Google Plus apps. You can share it through your Hangouts app. You can share it through any of the but the storage online, like Dropbox, like OneDrive. All of a sudden now, your list shows up. It starts out with 3. Now you got 60. Whereas on the Apple device, your share to is very limited. It's very constrained on there. So when Google built the functionality into the Snapseed, there's a Google Plus button that you can just click on it. It automatically will go out so you can post it onto Google Plus. So that enhancement allowed Apple devices to make it easier to actually share content to the Google Plus network from Apple devices, which to me was a win-win, because the more content that you can get that people are loving to share, the more fun it can actually be for people to enjoy. Yep. So we have one viewer there. Feel free to ask any questions if you have it. The replay will be available as well, so you can ask questions on there. On the replay, when you ask the questions on the YouTube, I'll get notified, and I'll be able to come back and respond to those. So if you're watching the YouTube videos, or you're watching the Hangout event and you're watching it later on and it's not live, you can still ask questions. I'll come back and respond to those, and these answers will actually be listed inside of the post or inside of the YouTube channel versus being live on the video. So you'll get your answers responded to, so feel free to ask anything that you're interested in. All right. So right now we're 35 minutes into the program. We're going pretty good here. So my next tip I want to talk about is camera security. Honestly, a lot of times we don't think about security when it comes to our equipment because we keep it with us. But if you travel with it all the time, it's something that you should think about. Security is not just from theft, but also keeping your equipment in tip-top shape. You don't want to leave your equipment in an ultra-hot car during the summertime, and I don't encourage you to leave it in an ultra-cold car during the wintertime. So when you're keeping your camera gear to help keep it in the best shape possible, you want to look at the environment that you're going to be traveling in and make sure that your camera equipment can actually stay in an ambient temperature. Most camera equipment is rated to work above 33 degrees Fahrenheit, which is freezing, and below 100 degrees. They can work in cooler temperatures, they can work in hotter temperatures, but it's not recommended to keep them out in long periods of time with the sunlight. So something that you can think about doing, if a lot of times you're going out and shooting sports photography, so you're sitting in the sun for long periods of time. Bring a towel, something we don't often think about, but if you take a towel, you can wrap it around your camera, and that'll help keep it, maybe 5 or 6 degrees cooler, which doesn't seem like it's a lot, but it can be the big difference between your equipment getting overheated and your equipment not getting overheated. And the same thing with shooting in the wintertime. Typically speaking, you're not going to have your hands out in, negative 10 degrees and taking pictures, but if that's something that you have to, think about using a towel as well in that environment. Do those little small things like that to help keep your equipment so that way it can survive so you can be able to use it, because most of the time it's not a cheap investment that we're making with this equipment. It's $500, it's $600, it's $2,000, it's $10,000. That's not cheap for a lot of people. So do little small things to maintain your security of your equipment. Also, when you're talking about security and talking about the physical security of it, feel free to keep your camera in the trunk. That way it's out of sight and it's out of mind for people to look. We are not often aware of how much we're watched by other people because by default, most of us is not security trained. We don't observe our environment as well as we can. It's very easy that we can go into a well neighborhood or a good neighborhood and we can think that no one's paying attention and we can grab something and throw it into the trunk in that area, and then we can come back and either the trunk is busted, the windows are busted, or even worse, the car is gone. So whenever you get an opportunity and you travel, just go ahead and put your stuff into your trunk before you get into that environment, or when you know that you're going somewhere else, put the things into the trunk before you go to the environment B. That way when you get to environment B, someone doesn't see you taking things out and put it into the trunk, because you never know who's watching, you never know what their intentions are. So always practice safety. And the same thing goes when you're out shooting pictures. Carry the equipment that you need to carry with you, but be observant of your environment and make sure that you're not pulling out and flashing more than what you need to flash and show. If all you need is one camera around your neck and one lens, then feel free to carry that one camera and lens. If you need to change out lenses, feel free to do it, but don't feel like you have to always drop down to your knees and open up your bag and display all of your equipment in your bag so you can change from one to another. Keep the things that you're going to swap out on the outer parts of the bag so that you can just reach your arm in and grab it with better ease. And if your bag doesn't offer that functionality, work on seeing if you can adjust it, or maybe even looking to invest in another bag with that ease of access in mind. Because unfortunately, when we make purchases, sometimes we don't often look at what our future endeavors might be with that purchase, so we don't properly plan ahead for it. So if you have to make new purchases for your current endeavors, try to think about your future endeavors as well as you can, because our vision is always 2020. We can only see what's ahead of us, and that's it. So if you can't think about what your next adventure is, do your best to think about other things you might be interested in. If you're thinking about going out and buying a whole bunch of short lenses or a whole bunch of long lenses, think about how you're going to properly transport those around and get a bag that's going to make it easier for you. You have any tips to contribute there, Adam?
That's a real good tip that you just mentioned about thinking about what you're going to purchase in the future. When I first started shooting with a DSLR, I bought the biggest bag that I could afford at the time. So I thought, I'm going to start. Right now I have the DSLR and the kit lens, but I'm going to plan on buying a longer zoom lens. I plan on buying another flash or two, plan on adding a few more lenses. Thought, let's get the biggest bag I can, and we'll just put everything in there, and I'll be able to take all of that on a shoot. And that was a great idea, and it worked for the first 30 minutes of the first photo shoot that I went on with that bag, because the weight of all the cameras, the batteries, the lenses, all the accessories, and everything, it doesn't seem like it's that heavy when you first start off, but 30 minutes in of trying to lug that around, plus your tripod and everything else, that becomes very strenuous on the back, and it'll give you a backache real quick. Right now, most of the time now, all I have is a messenger bag like this. Holds my DSLR lens, another lens, and a flash. Has everything I need for a quick walk. Yeah, just like that.
This is my messenger bag. I purchased this after I went out. I was planning a photo shoot in downtown Fort Worth, and I had my iPad, and I was walking around and trying to be properly prepared. I was like, I'm gonna bring my iPad with me. I'm gonna take some pictures of the area, and I'm gonna write some details about it because I'm gonna make this nice little Word document, and I'm gonna produce it as a PDF, and I'm gonna give it to everybody in advance so that way they can have it and they can see what our route course is going to be, what we're going to do. So as I'm walking around and doing it, I'm like, it is extremely difficult to write on my iPad and take pictures and walk around. So I was like, this isn't cutting it. I had a big backpack at the time. It wasn't as big, so I currently have a medium backpack. I can carry most of my gear in there. I have a bigger backpack, which is my travel one. That one I can put all my lenses into it. I can also slide my laptop into it. And once I put all that gear in there and I strap it onto my back, everybody who grabs it says that is extremely heavy. I imagine it gets to around 45 pounds or so. Excuse me. And it's very heavy. So I decided that it's great for me to travel with, but it's not something I can use when I travel to lug all my stuff around. So what I decided to do was do my best to travel with my mini bag and my big bag. So I use my big bag, then I'll pack my mini bag. The problem is that the mini bag is still bulky. So when I travel with it, it makes it difficult for me to throw it into luggage with all my other stuff that I have in the luggage. But the mini bag came about because when I was walking around, I found it cumbersome to swap back and forth. So I found this messenger bag. I can slide my tablet because I no longer use the iPad. I use a different tablet. I can slide that into the back because there was advertising this supporting up to 11-inch tablet or a 12-inch tablet or an iPad Air. Or not an iPad Air, a MacBook Air. You can slide back into that pocket. Now, like, okay, that works great for me. I can definitely use that. And it supports 3 lenses or 3 lens. And it also supports the camera body. So I typically carry my short lenses inside the bag because I can stuff the 70 to 200 in there, but I can't have the camera in there at the same time because of how big it is. And that's my little travel bag. I carry it around. I have it set so it's always going to be on my side or slightly on my side. I adjust the strapping, and then I can just whip it forward, pull my camera out, zip it back if I want to, then I can whip it back on the side, and I can just rattle off pictures. Click, 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 and I can slide it back up, drop the camera back in, zip it back up, and keep going in relative ease. I can also pull out my iPad or my tablet. I have a Samsung now for tablet, and peck away on the keys, any information about the local area that I want to, and I can keep it moving. It allows me to be more mobile when I'm doing photo walks, or more mobile when I'm out planning different things for the future, where I can utilize my tablet functionality and I can utilize my camera functionality to create for me a better experience for myself. And I recommend people to think about those different experiences. There's nothing wrong with having multiple bags. Unfortunately, there is no real single bag that I feel can do it all. I would like for the functionality of my big bag to have a detachment part where I can strap on my mini bag and then connect that up to a bigger one where I can strap in the laptop and a couple other lenses. But no one offers that functionality today. Anybody who knows anybody in the bag market who happens to watch this, that's a tip. See about the concept of designing that, where you can have a mini messenger bag that attaches to the bottom of another bag where you can then ultimately slide in your lenses. So for people that travel with their gear, they can travel with a messenger bag and their extra gear and their laptop with ease.
Also, I was also going to recommend if you're going to get another bag, Calvin and I both like our messenger bags. It's great for walking around. I've walked around with mine for a few hours, and it has just the right amount of weight. Doesn't hurt the shoulders. It's easy to move around, easy to get in and out, easy to open up storage pockets, and that's the key feature. I've got a backpack style camera bag, and I use this on longer walks or on nature walks or any place where I need a little bit more comfort for a longer photo walk. The bad thing about this, though, is that if you're going to be out on a photo walk, or you're going to be shooting a wedding, or if you're going to be in a place where there's a lot of people, the only bad drawback about this is that if I need anything out of the back, I have to pull it around to the front or set it down on a table or the ground, and I'll usually set my camera down to, or a speed light or anything else I have in my hands, set that down. If you're in a highly populated area, it's real easy for someone to just come by, snatch and grab, and it'll be gone. And the only reason I mention this is because I read a story about that happening to another photographer not long ago. So be sure to keep that in mind. But if you're in an area where you trust people, no big deal. This will work just fine also.
Yep. There's probably 500 different styles of bags out there that can suit anybody's need and interest. Mm-hmm. So feel free not to buy the first thing that you see. I highly prefer to go in and touch and feel and look at, because it gives me a better opinion of what I actually want. And with my messenger bag, the camera store that I went to, they didn't have it available there. But me going to that store allowed me to look at the different options of bags and different functionality and decide that what their selection was really wasn't what I wanted. So I continued on doing a little bit more research, and I found what I wanted, and I purchased it from the manufacturer, and the manufacturer basically told me, oh, it should be there in 7 to 10 days. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I received my bag in 2 days because the manufacturer actually contacted a local store that I didn't go visit. I didn't patronize their business at the time. And the local business direct shipped it to me. You know, so the manufacturer paid them, they shipped it out to me, everybody was happy. And I got my bag in 2 days, and I was like, oh, I get to go play with my new toy now. Let me go ahead and figure out what lens I'm going to put in here, and let me zip it up and see how it feels. Oh, let me adjust the strap on it. Okay, now I can sling it back and forth, and oh, this is real good. Oh, look, my tablet slides in real nice, and it's easy to grab out. Oh, it has a zipper, so that way I don't have to worry about it. So, yeah, it's definitely worth going out and touching and feeling, so you can make a better choice for you. You don't have to buy it from a local store. They may not even offer it locally for you to touch it. But by going and touching the other options, it helps you make a decision on what you really want. So I highly recommend people, you know, get out there. Same thing with a camera. Don't ever buy a camera to just sit in the store and that's it. You know, if you're buying a camera, you want to go try, because you're investing in that system, whether it be Canon, Nikon, Sony, Olympus, anything out there. You know, rent the camera as much as you can if you're looking at a DSLR. If you're looking at point and shoots, or you're looking at something on the lower end, you know, if you're spending $500 or less, do as much research as you can and buy what you feel is best. But if you're spending $1,000 or more, you need to know the system that you're buying into. Rent you a camera for a weekend. It might cost you $100. It might cost you $200. But you'll know that at the end of the day, it's an investment that you made that you really like. And don't just settle for one. Don't rent one brand or one model for a weekend like, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, I got to have it. The other vendor might offer something even better. You know, you thought that this was great, but no, this was just good. They're great. So don't listen to anybody. You know, people are going to always tell you one brand is better than the other. I never recommend a brand, because how I use a camera is not guaranteed to be how you use the camera. So me telling you need to buy a Canon because this is what I shoot with, it's not going to go down like that, because to me, I'm biased. I like the flow of the Canon. I like the flow of the software. I like the flow of the functionality that I get from it. But I picked up a Nikon, and I was confused because I've never really used the Nikon. So I can't tell you, oh, Nikons are bad, which some people will do. They'll be like, oh, Nikon's confusing. They do this wrong. They don't do this right. They don't do that right. And that's because they're brand biased. So when you listen to people talk about stuff, once you start hearing the brand bias, learn how to tune the bias out of what they're talking about, and then just listen strictly for what they're talking to as the functionality, because that's the real nitty-gritty that you want to get. How does it do this? How does it do that? I hear people start talking technically how one brand is better than the other because they do this function right or they do that function right. But if they do it 98% the same, how is that 2% going to be any different for a person? Most people are not technically capable of telling the difference between that 2%. Why? It's like telling the difference between a Toyota and a Honda. What's the difference between a Toyota and a Honda? What's the difference between a pair of Nike and Adidas? Most people can't tell you the technical differences between the two. To me, both Honda and Toyotas are cars. Nike and Adidas, they're both tennis shoes. That's about the extent I can tell you. But I can get in between the two and start telling you different things that I like and I don't like, what they do and they don't do. But does that mean they're going to be the same for you? You might like to have your signals on the left-hand side. I might like them on the right. You might like to have your stereo up at the top of the dash, and I might like it at the bottom. You might prefer to have a shifter in the center console, and you might prefer the shifter on the steering wheel. Those are all different functions that they'll do something different from one or the other, but the shifter works the same on both. You just have preferences on which one you like. The signals work on both, whether it's left or right. You just have preferences on which one you want. So is the difference really anything worth? No, it's just a preference. So I can't tell you they're better because their shifter is over here on the steering column. It's better to have it on the steering column because that's how it should be. So it's all personal preference. So do your best to follow what you feel is best versus following what other people tell you should do. Anything else to contribute there, Adam?
Not for tonight.
So, do you have any plans for this upcoming weekend to go out and shoot?
Actually, I do. The Good Guys National Hot Rod Show is coming to Texas Motor Speedway, and since I live in Fort Worth, it's not a very long drive for me. And they always have thousands of hot rods, lead sleds, just about anything you could ever want. They also have part swap, cars for sale, everything. I mean, I usually go there first thing in the morning at 8 o'clock, and I'll leave there just before they close.
So what gear do you plan on taking?
Do what?
What gear do you plan on taking?
My camera and maybe a 35 millimeter prime. I shoot mainly with all primes. I've nothing wrong with the zooms. I just like the wider aperture of that primes give me, and I notice it from my point of shooting is that they're usually a little bit faster focusing too. But I might take a 35 and a 50 millimeter. 35 for the wider shots of the cars, but 50 for the car owner. Usually I'll get a picture of the person who owns the car because after talking to them for a while, they sometimes give you this deep emotional story about, oh, I bought this car for $500 and it was rusty and it was falling apart and I had to redo the bodywork and I had to repaint it and rebuild the engine, transmission, and everything. And then after a while, they just start opening up. They start relaxing a little bit. And then that's a good time to get candid pictures because while they're pointing to something and describing one story, they may remember something else. And if you got your camera up ready to shoot, you may catch them when they're remembering something funny that happened. And those candid pictures really make a picture stand out from just someone posed, arms put together and they're just like this and not really. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like they're posing for a DMV photo. Like, we'll leave that for the DMV where the pictures don't look all that great. I'm always looking for something that shows emotion. Someone smiling, someone frowning, someone angry, someone smiling, someone overjoyed, or doing anything to tell a story. Makes the picture stand out a little bit more over just a plain picture where they're standing in front of something.
Yep. Excuse me. So for me, I have been using the Nikon and taking some pictures of my son at his football games, and I have not done anything with the pictures yet. They're actually still on the memory card that I gave back to my wife so that she can be able to look at. And I've been curious on when she's actually going to take it out the memory, and I said, let's look at it on the big screen. So we can look at it, and if I put it into a USB stick, I can look at it on my TV screen, or she can actually view it on her computer, which is a bigger screen. I mean, I've been waiting to get the wow factor. About 2 months ago, I took it out, and she was talking about she wants to do moon pictures. And I'm like, okay. And as soon as she get home, she does what we always do: get home, strip off our daytime clothes, and put on our home clothes. And I look at her and it's like, so when are you gonna take the night pictures? When are you gonna take some moon pictures? Oh, I forgot. I'll do it tomorrow. So after 2 weeks of this, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I just came home, seen the moon was looking nice and pretty up in the sky. Like, I'm going to take the zoom out and see what the zoom can do. Grabbed my tripod, strapped it on top of it, fiddled around. I started out with the ultra zoom on in, and I realized I couldn't find where the moon was at because I was zoomed in so far. That little slight movement that you would make just wasn't moving quick enough. So I had to zoom on out. So, oh, there go the moon. All right, now let me zoom on it. Okay, let me move a little bit. Zzz, zzz, and then zoomed in on the moon. And I'm like, okay, it does take good pictures of the moon. Okay, I can do with this. So I walk back in, unstrap the camera from the tripod, hand it to her, and walk away. She looked at me kind of crazy, like, why? What you give me the camera for? Nothing. I went on this and that. She's like, oh, these look great. I was like, you could have did the same thing. And so I gave her a hard time about that. And then my son, he had a football game. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to take this. I'm like, that way, because once again, that 200 millimeter just doesn't get you close enough into the field. It gets me close enough where I can see the whole field scattered on there, but I can't really focus in on him as much as I want. So I'm like, well, I'm going to use the zoom. First time I brought it, discovered that the mount for the tripod wasn't attached. She took it off and never put it back. So this Wednesday, the last 2 weeks, because I was working late shift at work, I wasn't able to go to his games. So this Tuesday, I was able to go to the game. I was like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and take this with me to work. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the door, grab the mount, screw it on the bottom of the camera, plugged it in. I carry a monopod with me. So I got something to hold this steady with. And I went out there and snapped some pictures. I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. And that's when I found out, like, got to be a sports setting on. So I worked it around, realized what the sports setting was, and then it was like, click, and then it showed me the picture, and then I can take the next one. Well, I got a great picture of him getting off the line, but the play is over now, and I'm just now being able to take another picture. So like, well, I can't take pictures of him getting off the line. Let me go ahead and figure out when I want to actually take the picture. And since I've been shooting as long as I've been shooting, I learned how to shoot with two eyes. I have one eye focusing on what I'm shooting at, and I have the other eye peeking at whatever's going on in my surroundings. So I'm watching the play out of the one eye that's not looking through the camera, and then right when I figure, okay, that looks like a good shot, click. And it's pretty quick when I hit the click button to take the picture, but getting it back for me to take the next one, it does take a little bit of time. So next week, I think I'm going to look through a couple of those pictures and pick out one or two and show off some of my photography for you guys. But we'll figure it out. This weekend, I think I'm going to go out and shoot something. Depends on how it goes. We're Wednesday now. I'm not locked into the weekend just yet. Got a couple more projects at work I need to wrap up. But we're now counting down to 8:30 Central Time. We have another minute. Do you want to say anything with your goodbye there, Adam?
One last tip for everyone. I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again because it's worth mentioning. Whenever you get ready to go take pictures, make sure that your batteries are in there, are in your camera, and they're fully charged. I've made that mistake more times than I care to admit, so that's why 99% of the time I'll have a battery grip on my camera, and at least one battery is always fully charged in it, so I'm always ready to go at a moment's notice.
Your Nikon requires 2 batteries to be fully functional there, buddy? What's up with
Hey, we could make some Canon jokes too, but we'll see that for another
I just
show.
I just typically I looked at the cost of what those extra batteries was, and I think it was $110 or $150. I'm like, whoa! I like and Canon advertises, oh, you can get 700 shots out of a single battery. I was like, I don't, when I first started shooting DSLR, back in 2005, I think. I could have routed all 700 pictures and I would have killed the battery. I've grown since then. I have no need to take 700 pictures. I'm gonna be good with one battery. I don't know what Nikon rates their batteries. I'm quite sure they rate them somewhere along that line. But yeah, I just looked at that and looked at the cost of the battery and was like, yeah, I'm gonna hold off on that price. That's kind of pricey in my price range.
Yeah, one of these is the factory Nikon battery, and the other one is one that I got off of Amazon. And when I first got it, it was, um, if I remember correctly, it was $30. Not too bad for a camera battery. And when I first got it, I shot exclusively with just the one new battery. And I put it through its paces just to see how it compared to the Nikon battery. And it's pretty close when it comes to the longevity. So it may not work for every camera, but for my uses, it works great.
That's right. That's really what matters. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and end the show now. We'll be talking with you next week, same time, 7:30 p.m. Central to 8:30 p.m. Central. And we're going to have more topics of discussion. We're going to have more fun for you guys. So keep shooting, keep having fun. Catch you later.